They didn't even bother to remove the chains before they threw her at his feet. The throne room smelled like iron and old smoke. Thelma knelt on cold stone, wrists bound in silver that burned through her skin like a promise. She kept her head down, not out of respect, but survival. 20 years of living as the cursed orphan had taught her one truth: eye contact invited violence. The Alpha King hadn't spoken yet. She could feel him, though. A presence so heavy it pressed against her ribs like a hand squeezing her lungs. The council elders stood in a half-circle behind her, their robes rustling with barely concealed satisfaction. They'd warned her during the 3-day journey north, do not speak unless he commands it. Do not look at him unless he permits it. Do not expect mercy, you are not here to receive it. This, one of the elders announced, his voice echoing off vaulted ceilings, is the bride the High Council presents to you, Your Majesty. As agreed upon in the treaty negotiations. Thelma's jaw tightened. Treaty. They made it sound noble. Clean. But she knew the truth, she'd heard them laughing about it in the carriage. She wasn't a bride. She was a humiliation wrapped in ceremony. A bastard orphan with traitor's blood, gifted to the most powerful alpha in the realm like a deliberate insult. The Alpha King's voice, when it finally came, was low and sharp as a blade drawn in darkness. Remove the chains. A guard moved forward immediately, keys jangling. The silver cuffs fell away, and Thelma's wrists throbbed with relief and pain. She still didn't look up. Couldn't. Because looking up meant seeing him, and seeing him meant acknowledging that this nightmare was real. Stand. She obeyed, rising slowly on trembling legs. Her plain gray dress hung loose on her too thin frame, they hadn't bothered to give her anything ceremonial. Why would they? This wasn't a wedding. It was a transaction. Look at me. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Slowly, so slowly, Thelma lifted her chin. And met the eyes of the wolf who would either kill her or destroy her. Before we dive into this tale of power, darkness, and a love that defies every rule, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. And hey, how are you doing today? I hope you're ready for this journey, because once we start, there's no turning back. Alpha King Martin Stormborn was everything the rumors promised and worse. Tall, broad-shouldered, with black hair that fell just past his collar and a face carved from granite and fury. But it was his eyes that stole her breath, pale silver, cold as winter moonlight, utterly devoid of warmth. He studied her the way a predator studies wounded prey, calculating how long she'd last. She's underwhelming, he said finally, his gaze sliding over her with clinical detachment. Malnourished. Weak. Broken, from the look of her. The lead elder stepped forward, wringing his hands. Your Majesty, the council believed. The council believed they could mock me. Martin's voice didn't rise, but the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. By sending me the orphan daughter of executed traitors. A wolf so powerless she doesn't even have a rank. Thelma's nails bit into her palms. Don't react. Don't give them the satisfaction. But something flickered in Martin's expression, brief, sharp, dangerous. His nostrils flared slightly, and his head tilted as if catching a scent he couldn't quite place. However, he continued, his eyes never leaving hers, the treaty was signed. The marriage will proceed. Relief and terror warred in Thelma's chest. Martin descended from his throne with lethal grace, each step measured and deliberate. He stopped inches from her, so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the pine and steel scent that clung to him. Do you know why they gave you to me? He asked softly. Thelma's throat was dry as sand. To unite the packs, Your Majesty. His laugh was cold and humorless. No. They gave you to me because they wanted to see if I'd reject the bond publicly. If I'd humiliate myself by refusing the daughter of traitors. He leaned down, his breath ghosting against her ear. They wanted to test my pride. Her pulse thundered in her ears. But here's what they didn't consider, Martin whispered, and there was something almost curious in his tone now, something that made her skin prickle with warning. I don't reject challenges. I crush them. He straightened, addressing the elders without looking away from her. The ceremony will take place at moonrise. Minimal attendance. No celebration. His pale eyes bored into hers. And afterwards, your new queen will learn exactly what happens to pawns who enter my territory. The elders bowed and retreated, their mission accomplished. Thelma stood frozen as Martin circled her slowly, like a wolf sizing up territory. When he completed the circle, he stopped directly in front of her again. Tell me your name, he commanded. Thelma, she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. But everyone calls me Thelma. Thelma. He tested it on his tongue, and something flickered across his face. Recognition? Confusion? It vanished too quickly to name. Do you know what your parents did, Thelma? No, your majesty. The truth. They'd never told her. Just executed them in the town square and burned the records. Good. Keep it that way. He turned toward the throne, dismissing her with a gesture. Guards will escort you to your chambers. Don't wander. Don't speak to anyone. And don't mistake this marriage for protection. He paused at the base of his throne, glancing back over his shoulder. The council wanted to punish you by giving you to me. What they don't realize yet. His smile was a razor's edge. Is that I intend to make their punishment look like mercy. The chambers they gave her were gilded cage dressed as luxury. Thelma stood in the center of the room, arms wrapped around herself, trying to process the last hour of her life. Marble floors. Velvet curtains the color of midnight. A bed large enough to sleep 5 people, draped in furs she'd never be able to afford in 10 lifetimes. A balcony overlooking mountains that pierced the sky like teeth. It was beautiful. It was a prison. Miss? A soft voice made her jump. A young woman stood in the doorway, petite, with warm brown eyes and honey-colored hair pulled into a braid. She wore the simple gray uniform of palace staff and carried an armful of deep green fabric. I'm Maya, she said gently, stepping inside. I've been assigned as your lady's maid. She set the fabric down on a chair, a dress, Thelma realized. For the ceremony. I brought something for you to wear tonight, and I'll help you bathe and, she paused, really looking at Thelma for the first time. Her expression softened with something that looked dangerously close to pity. Oh, sweetheart. When's the last time you ate? Thelma's defenses rose automatically. I'm fine. You're shaking. Maya moved closer, no threat in her posture, just concern. Listen, I know you've had a horrible day. I know you're scared. But I'm not your enemy, I promise. I'm just here to help. Something in her voice, the simple, genuine kindness, made Thelma's throat tighten. She'd lived 5 years in the Southern Territory's servant quarters after her parents died. 5 years of cold floors, stale bread, and casual cruelty from wolves who saw her as less than nothing. No one had spoken to her with gentleness in so long that it felt foreign. I don't trust easily, Thelma whispered. Smart girl. Maya smiled sadly. Especially not here. But you need to eat, and you need to be ready for tonight, so let me do my job. After that, if you want me gone, I'll go. Thelma hesitated, then nodded. 20 minutes later, she sat in a copper bathtub filled with steaming water that smelled of lavender and something else, something wild and woodsy that must be native to the northern mountains. Maya worked quietly, washing 5 years of grime and neglect from Thelma's dark auburn hair. Can I ask you something? Thelma ventured. Of course. The Alpha King. Is everything they say about him true? Maya's hands paused for just a moment. What do they say? That he's cruel. That he kills without mercy. That he broke his mate bond and has felt nothing since. The rumors aren't exaggerated, Maya said carefully. King Martin is complicated. He took the throne 12 years ago when his father was assassinated. He was only 16. The pack was fracturing, enemies were circling, and the council tried to control him. She resumed washing, her voice dropping lower. He crushed every rebellion. Executed every traitor. Built this kingdom on fear and absolute authority. And yes, he had a fated mate once. She betrayed him. Sold information to his enemies. He killed her himself. Thelma's blood ran cold. But, Maya continued, he's also the reason the northern territories haven't fallen to the rogue packs. The reason we have food through winter. The reason children don't disappear in the night anymore. He's ruthless, but he protects what's his. And what am I? Thelma asked quietly. Am I his? Or am I just another enemy he hasn't killed yet? Maya met her eyes, and the honesty there was almost worse than a lie. I don't know. But I do know this, you're the first woman he's allowed in the palace since his mate's execution. The first person the council has dared send him in years. That means something. It means they want him to kill me publicly. Maybe. Maya helped her from the bath, wrapping her in a towel. Or maybe they're more afraid of you than they let on. Thelma wanted to laugh at the absurdity. Her? Dangerous? She was a nobody. A wolf who'd never even experienced her first shift because she was too weak, too broken, too cursed by her parents' sins. But Maya's expression was serious. Your parents, the maid said carefully. Do you remember them at all? Barely. I was 15 when they died. My mother had dark red hair like mine. My father was quiet, kind. They kept me hidden mostly, said it was safer that I didn't draw attention. Old pain twisted in her chest. I didn't even get to say goodbye. The council guards came at dawn, dragged them to the square, and executed them before noon. They never told me why. And no one's ever explained it? No one will even speak their names. It's like they've been erased from history. Maya bit her lip, clearly wrestling with something. Finally, she said, there are rumors. Old ones. About bloodlines the council tried to eliminate centuries ago. Powers that threatened their control. What kind of powers? I don't know. But, she stopped abruptly as footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. The door opened without ceremony. A man entered, tall, broad-shouldered, with golden hair and amber eyes that assessed Thelma with sharp intelligence. He wore the black and silver uniform of the King's Guard, and something about the way he moved spoke of deadly competence. Lady Thelma, he said, his voice deep and formal. I'm Commander Darius Blackwood, Captain of the King's Guard. His Majesty has sent me to escort you to the ceremony. His gaze flicked to Maya. Is she ready? Almost, Maya said quickly, helping Thelma into the dress. The gown was beautiful, deep forest green with silver embroidery that caught the light like stars. It fit perfectly, hugging her too thin frame in ways that made her look less fragile, more regal. Darius studied her for a long moment, and something flickered in his expression, surprise, maybe. Or concern. You look like a queen, he said finally. I'm not a queen. I'm a punishment. His amber eyes sharpened. Then make them regret it. The ceremony took place in the palace's inner sanctum, a circular stone chamber open to the night sky. Thelma's breath misted in the cold mountain air as Darius led her through towering iron doors. Torches lined the walls, their flames casting dancing shadows across ancient runes carved into the stone. At the center of the chamber stood a raised platform beneath the full moon's silver gaze. And waiting on that platform, dressed in black ceremonial armor, stood the Alpha King. Martin's pale eyes found hers immediately, tracking her approach with predatory focus. Beside him stood an elderly man in white robes, the high priest, she assumed. Only a handful of witnesses occupied the chamber, council members who'd traveled north, a few of Martin's highest-ranking guards, and Maya, who gave Thelma an encouraging nod from the shadows. This wasn't a celebration. It was an execution with prettier words. "Bring her forward," the high priest commanded. Darius walked her to the platform's base, then stepped back. Thelma climbed the stone steps alone, each one feeling like a march toward her own grave. When she reached the top, Martin extended his hand, not a gesture of kindness, but a command. She placed her hand in his. His grip was firm, cold, utterly impersonal. But the moment their skin connected, something jolted through her, a shock of recognition that made her gasp. Martin's eyes widened fractionally, his fingers tightening around hers. He felt it too. "We gather under the witness of the moon," the high priest began, his voice echoing off stone, "to bind Alpha King Martin Stormborn to Lady Thelma, as decreed by the High Council and sealed by ancient law." Thelma barely heard the words. All her focus was on the strange heat spreading from where Martin's hand gripped hers, not painful, but intense. Wrong. Like something sleeping beneath her skin had recognized something in him and stirred awake. "The bond of marriage is sacred among our kind," the priest continued. "It cannot be broken by mortal will, only by death itself." Martin's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Do you, Martin Stormborn, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, accept this woman as your bonded mate and queen?" "I accept." His voice was flat, emotionless. "A business transaction." "And do you, Thelma, daughter of," the priest paused, consulting his notes with a slight frown, "accept this man as your bonded mate and king?" "Daughter of no one. Daughter of traitors. Daughter of ghosts." "I accept," Thelma whispered. "Then by the power vested in me by the moon herself, I declare you bound." The priest produced a ceremonial blade, its edge gleaming silver. "Blood to blood. Soul to soul. Let the bond be sealed." He handed the blade to Martin first. Without hesitation, the Alpha King drew the blade across his palm. Dark blood welled immediately, and he turned his hand over, letting it drip onto the stone platform where ancient symbols had been carved. Then he handed the blade to Thelma. Her hand trembled as she took it. The last time she'd seen her own blood spilled, it had been at the hands of wolves who'd beaten her for speaking out of turn. But this was different. This was a choice, or as close to one as she'd ever get. She pressed the blade to her palm and pulled. Pain bloomed, sharp and bright. Blood ran down her wrist, and she held her hand over the symbols, letting it mix with Martin's. The moment their blood touched, the world exploded. Light erupted from the platform, blinding, silver, ancient. The symbols carved into the stone blazed to life, burning so bright that witnesses cried out and shielded their eyes. Wind howled through the chamber despite the still night outside, whipping Thelma's hair around her face. And inside her chest, something that had been locked away her entire life shattered. Power flooded through her veins like liquid moonlight, wild, furious, terrifying. She gasped, falling to her knees as her entire body ignited with sensations she'd never experienced. Her wolf, silent for 20 years, roared to life inside her mind with such force that she screamed. Martin grabbed her shoulders, his eyes wide with shock. "What is this?" he demanded. "What are you?" But Thelma couldn't answer. The power was too much, too overwhelming. Images flashed through her mind, memories that weren't hers. A woman with red hair standing before a council, defiant. A man being chained. A child hidden in darkness. Words spoken in a language she didn't know but somehow understood. The bloodline cannot be extinguished. Only buried. And when the seal breaks, the reckoning comes. Then, as suddenly as it began, the light vanished. Thelma collapsed against Martin, gasping for air. The platform was scorched black where their blood had mixed. The symbol still glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Dead silence filled the chamber. The high priest stared at the platform, his face ashen. That's impossible. The lunar seal hasn't activated in 3 centuries. Not since the Blood Moon massacre, one of the council members finished, his voice shaking. When the council eliminated the last of the Oracle bloodline. Martin's hands were still on Thelma's shoulders, but his grip had changed, no longer restraining, but steadying. His pale eyes searched her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You knew," he said softly, dangerously. "Not a question. An accusation." "I didn't," Thelma managed. "I swear, I didn't know." "The council knew." Darius's voice cut through the chaos. He'd stepped forward, his hand on his sword, amber eyes blazing with fury as he glared at the council members. "They knew what she was. That's why they sent her here. Not to humiliate you, Your Majesty." His gaze swung to Thelma, something like awe and horror mixing in his expression. To eliminate the last threat to their power. Martin stood slowly, pulling Thelma up with him. When he spoke, his voice was deadly calm. "Everyone out. Now." The witnesses scrambled to obey, even the council members fleeing like rabbits before a wolf. Within seconds, only Martin, Thelma, and Darius remained. Martin turned to his commander. "Seal the palace. No one enters or leaves without my explicit permission. And find out everything, and I mean everything, about the Oracle bloodline and the Blood Moon massacre. Your Majesty." "Now, Darius." The commander bowed and left, leaving Thelma alone with her new husband. Martin circled her slowly, and this time there was no cruel amusement in his expression. Only cold calculation and something else, something that looked almost like hunger. "So," he murmured. "The council didn't send me a broken Omega to mock me. They sent me a weapon they couldn't control." He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "The question is, are you a weapon pointed at me? Or at them?" Thelma's newly awakened wolf snarled inside her mind, refusing to submit. "I'm not a weapon at all. I'm a person." His smile was sharp as broken glass. "No, Thelma. You stopped being just a person the moment our blood mixed and the lunar seal recognized you." He leaned down, his breath ghosting across her lips. "You're something the council has been trying to kill for centuries. Something powerful enough that they'd rather give you to me, their greatest threat, than let you live free. I don't understand any of this." "You will." His hand came up, fingers gripping her chin with surprising gentleness. "Because whether you wanted this or not, whether I wanted this or not, you and I are now bound. And I don't leave mysteries unsolved." His thumb brushed across her lower lip, and heat flooded through her, the mate bond, she realized with horror. It was real. Active. Singing between them despite everything. "Here's what's going to happen," Martin said softly. "You're going to stay in this palace under my protection. You're going to tell me everything you remember about your parents. And you're going to learn to control whatever power just woke up inside you." His pale eyes glittered with dark promise. "Because if the council wants you dead badly enough to use me as the executioner, then keeping you alive just became my new favorite way to destroy them." Thelma didn't sleep that night. How could she? Every time she closed her eyes, she felt it, the power coiled beneath her skin like a living thing, waiting. Watching. Her wolf, silent for 20 years, now paced restlessly in her mind, stronger and more alert than any Omega's wolf had a right to be. And then there was the bond. She could feel Martin even through the stone walls separating their chambers. His presence thrummed against her consciousness like a second heartbeat, dark, powerful, utterly overwhelming. The mate bond the ceremony had activated wasn't supposed to work like this. Arranged marriages didn't create true mate bonds. Everyone knew that. Except theirs had. When dawn finally broke, Maya arrived with breakfast and questions in her eyes that she was too well trained to voice. She helped Thelma dress in a simple gown of deep sapphire, braided her hair, and tried to make conversation about the weather. But the tension hung between them like smoke. "The king has requested your presence in his study," Maya finally said. "Commander Blackwood will escort you." Thelma's stomach nodded. "When?" "Now." Darius was waiting outside her door, his expression unreadable. They walked through corridors of polished stone and dark wood, past servants who stopped and stared, past guards who watched her with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "They're afraid of you," Darius said quietly. "They don't even know me. They know what happened in the ceremony chamber. Word spreads fast in the palace." He glanced at her sidelong. "The lunar seal hasn't activated in 300 years. Some of the older wolves remember the stories their grandparents told, about oracles who could see the future, manipulate lunar magic, challenge even the Alpha's authority." "I can't do any of that," Thelma protested. "I don't even know what I am." "Then it's time you learned." He stopped before a heavy oak door and knocked twice. Martin's voice came from within, "Enter." The study was smaller than Thelma expected, lined with books, maps spread across a massive desk, a fire crackling in the hearth. Martin stood by the window, silhouetted against the morning light. He'd abandoned his ceremonial armor for simple black clothing that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. "Leave us," he told Darius without turning around. The commander hesitated for a fraction of a second, then bowed and left, closing the door behind him. Silence stretched between them. "Come here," Martin finally said. Thelma's wolf bristled at the command, but she forced herself to walk forward. When she stood a few feet from him, he turned to face her. In the daylight, she could see details she'd missed before. The scar that cut through his left eyebrow. The exhaustion shadowing his pale eyes despite his rigid posture. The way his jaw tightened when he looked at her, like he was fighting some internal battle. "Can you feel it?" he asked. "The bond?" There was no point in lying. "Yes." "Good. That means you're not completely oblivious to what's happening." He moved to his desk, pulling out a leather-bound book so old the pages were yellow. "I had Darius research all night. The Oracle bloodline was supposedly wiped out during the Blood Moon massacre 300 years ago. The council claimed they were too dangerous, that they manipulated alphas, started wars, threatened the natural order." "And you believe that?" His eyes snapped to hers. "I believe the council lies when it serves them. I also believe that powers which threaten their control tend to disappear conveniently." He opened the book, turning it so she could see. The page showed a drawing of a woman with a crescent moon mark on her forehead, surrounded by silver light. Oracles were bonded to the moon itself. They could read the future in her phases, draw power from her light, and, according to legend, they could strengthen or destroy an alpha's bond with their pack. Thelma's blood ran cold. That's why the council eliminated them. That's why they tried. Martin's finger traced the illustration. But bloodlines are stubborn things. They hide. They wait. They resurface when you least expect them. He looked up at her. "Your parents. Tell me what you remember." "I already told you, barely anything. They kept me hidden, kept me quiet. They never explained why. Because they knew what you were. They knew that if the council discovered you..." He closed the book with a heavy thud. "They'd do exactly what they're doing now. Use you as a weapon or eliminate the threat. I'm not a threat to anyone. You activated a 300-year-old seal with a single drop of blood, Martin said flatly. You're a threat to everyone. The question is whether you're my threat or theirs. Anger flared in Thelma's chest, hot and bright and unfamiliar. She'd spent 5 years swallowing her rage, burying her pain, surviving by being invisible. But something had changed. The power humming beneath her skin wouldn't let her be small anymore. I'm not anyone's weapon, she said, her voice steady despite the fury building inside her. Not yours. Not the council's. Not anyone's. Something flickered in Martin's expression. Surprise? Approval? It vanished too quickly to name. Brave words for someone who couldn't shift until yesterday. He circled around the desk, moving with that predatory grace that made her pulse quicken. But bravery without power is just stupidity. If you want to survive what's coming, you need to learn control. Control over what? This. He was suddenly in front of her, so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body. His hand came up, and before she could react, he pressed his palm flat against her chest, right over her heart. Power exploded between them. Silver light erupted from where they'd touched, and Thelma gasped as the bond flared to life, not gentle, but violent and demanding. She could feel Martin's wolf rising to meet hers, could feel the raw strength of his alpha power crashing against her awakening magic like waves against a cliff. Feel that? Martin's voice was rough, strained. That's what happens when an oracle and an alpha bond. It's not supposed to be possible anymore. The council made sure of it. His other hand gripped her hip, holding her steady as the power surged between them. But somehow, you and I just became the most dangerous combination in 3 centuries. Thelma's hands had come up instinctively, gripping his arms. Through the bond, she could feel things she had no right to feel, his confusion, his fury, and underneath it all, a hunger that terrified her. Let go, she whispered. I can't. And there was something almost vulnerable in his admission. The bond won't let me. The moment our blood mixed, it decided we belonged to each other. You don't want me. You said I was a punishment. I said you were meant to be a punishment. His thumb brushed against her ribcage, and she shivered. I didn't say it worked. Before she could process that, he pulled back abruptly, severing the connection. The loss was immediate and aching. Martin turned away, running a hand through his dark hair. We have a problem. The council will expect me to present you at the Alpha Summit in 3 weeks. Every major pack leader will be there. They'll see what you are the moment you walk into the room. And then? And then they'll either try to control you or kill you. Possibly both. He faced her again, and his expression was pure calculation. Which means we have 3 weeks to turn you from a liability into a threat they can't afford to eliminate. How? A slow, dangerous smile curved his lips. By teaching you to be exactly what they fear most. A fully awakened oracle bonded to the most powerful alpha in the realm. 3 weeks became a blur of training, secrets, and dangerous proximity. Every morning, Martin pushed Thelma to her limits. He taught her to access the power coiled inside her, not through gentleness, but through controlled provocation. He'd corner her in the training yard, force her wolf to surface, make her angry enough that the silver light would spark beneath her skin. Control it, he'd demand as power crackled between her fingers. Don't let it control you. And slowly, painfully, she learned. Her wolf grew stronger. The visions came more frequently, flashes of the past, glimpses of possible futures, fragments of conversations that hadn't happened yet. She learned to read the moon's phases, to draw strength from its light, to feel the ebb and flow of pack bonds like invisible threads connecting every wolf in the territory. But the most dangerous part wasn't the power. It was Martin himself. The mate bond grew stronger with each passing day, each touch, each moment of forced proximity. She caught herself watching him during training sessions, the way he moved, the rare moments when his cold mask slipped and something almost human flickered beneath. And worse, she felt his attention on her constantly, that predatory focus that made her skin heat and her wolf purr with satisfaction. They were playing with fire. And neither of them knew how to stop. The night before the Alpha Summit, Thelma couldn't sleep again. She stood on her balcony, wrapped in a silk robe, watching the full moon climb the sky. Power thrummed through her veins in response, stronger now, more controlled, but still wild at its core. You should be resting. She spun to find Martin standing in her doorway. He wore only loose sleep pants, his muscled chest bare, dark hair disheveled. For once, he looked less like a king and more like a man. I could say the same to you, she managed. He stepped onto the balcony, and the space suddenly felt too small. Tomorrow changes everything. The moment you walk into that summit, every alpha in the realm will know what you are. There's no hiding it anymore. I know. Some will want to ally with us. Others will see you as a threat to eliminate. His pale eyes reflected moonlight. And the council will make their move. I'm certain of it. Then why bring me at all? Why not keep me hidden? Because hiding you gives them power over us. He moved closer, and she could feel the heat of him in the cool night air. But if we show them you're not afraid, that you're strong enough to stand beside me, it changes the game entirely. I'm not strong enough, Thelma whispered. 3 weeks ago, I couldn't even shift. Now you want me to face the most powerful wolves in the world and pretend I belong among them? Martin's hand came up, tilting her chin so she had to meet his eyes. You activated a seal that's been dormant for 3 centuries. You've learned more control in 3 weeks than most wolves achieve in years. And whether you believe it or not, his thumb brushed across her jawline, you were born for this. The bond flared between them, and Thelma's breath caught. This close, she could see the conflict in his expression, the war between the ruthless king who trusted no one and the man bound to her by magic neither of them had chosen. Martin, she breathed, using his name for the first time without his title. Something in his gaze shattered. He kissed her. Not gently. Not carefully. But with the pent-up hunger of 3 weeks fighting the inevitable. His hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back as his mouth claimed hers with devastating thoroughness. The mate bond exploded between them, silver light crackling across their skin, power surging in waves that made the very air around them shimmer. Thelma should have pushed him away. Should have remembered that this was strategy, politics, a bond neither of them wanted. But her wolf was singing, her power was rising to meet his, and for the first time in her life, she felt whole. When Martin finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. His forehead rested against hers, his hands framing her face. This is a mistake, he said roughly. I know. The bond is manipulating us. Making us feel things that aren't real. I know. But her hands were fisted in his hair, and she made no move to let go. He pulled back enough to look at her, and what she saw in his eyes made her heart stutter. Not coldness. Not calculation. But genuine, raw vulnerability. My first mate betrayed me, he said quietly. Sold information to my enemies that got 17 of my wolves killed. I executed her myself, broke the bond, and swore I'd never let anyone that close again. His jaw tightened. And then the council sent me you. A girl I was supposed to break and discard. A punishment wrapped in prophecy. Martin. But you're not broken. His thumb traced her lower lip. You're the strongest person I've ever met, and you don't even know it yet. And that terrifies me more than any enemy I've ever faced. Thelma's throat tightened with emotion. Why? Because if I let myself care about you, truly care, I give my enemies the perfect weapon to destroy me. He stepped back, creating distance that felt like a physical wound. And I've already lost too much to allow that. Before she could respond, a commotion erupted from inside the palace. Darius burst onto the balcony, his face grim. "Your Majesty. We have a problem." Martin's entire demeanor shifted instantly, from vulnerable to lethal in a heartbeat. "Report. A messenger just arrived from the High Council. They've moved the summit forward." Darius's amber eyes flicked to Thelma. "It starts tomorrow at dawn. And they've made a formal accusation." Ice flooded Thelma's veins. "Accusation of what?" "Witchcraft. Conspiracy. Treason." Darius handed Martin a sealed letter. "They're claiming that Lady Thelma used forbidden magic to manipulate the Alpha King into marriage. They're demanding her immediate arrest and trial before the assembled Alphas." Martin tore open the letter, his expression darkening with each line he read. When he finished, he crumpled it in his fist. "It's a trap," he said flatly. "They're forcing my hand. Either I defend her and look weak, like a manipulated fool, or I give her up and prove I can't protect my own mate." "There's more," Darius said grimly. "They produced a witness. Someone who claims to have proof that Thelma's parents weren't just traitors, they were part of a conspiracy to overthrow the council using oracle magic." "That's a lie," Thelma protested. "My parents never." "The witness," Martin interrupted, his voice deadly calm. "Who is it?" Darius met his king's eyes. "Elder Jerry. Your father's former advisor. The wolf who was supposed to be executed for his role in the assassination." The words hung in the air like poison. Thelma's mind reeled. Elder Jerry had been at her parents' execution. He'd been the one who'd read the charges, who'd declared them traitors. And now he was testifying against her? "It's not just a trap," Martin said softly, dangerously. "It's a revelation. They're admitting that your parents' execution and my father's assassination are connected." Which means the council has been hiding something for 15 years, Thelma finished, her voice shaking. "Something big enough to kill 4. Martin turned to her, and the look in his eyes made her wolf howl with recognition. This wasn't her cruel captor anymore. This was her mate, her alpha, her equal. "They made a fatal mistake," he said. "They pushed too hard, too fast. And now we know there's a secret worth protecting." He pulled her close, one hand cupping the back of her neck. "Tomorrow, we walk into that summit together. And we make them tell us the truth, no matter what it costs. They'll try to kill me. Let them try." His smile was sharp as a blade. "You're an oracle bonded to a king. If they want war, we'll give them one they'll never forget." The summit hall was a cathedral of stone and power. Thelma stood at Martin's side as they entered, her hand resting in the crook of his arm. Every alpha in the northern realm had gathered, 37 pack leaders, their mates, their advisors. The air crackled with dominance displays and barely concealed hostility. And every single eye turned to her. She felt their wolves assess her, probe her, test the boundaries of her power. Her own wolf rose to meet them, silver light flickering beneath her skin. Martin's grip on her hand tightened in warning. "Control," he reminded her through the bond they were still learning to navigate. The High Council sat at the far end of the hall on an elevated platform, 12 elders in white robes, their faces masks of righteous authority. And standing among them, looking far too smug, was Elder Jerry. The wolf who'd watched her parents die. "Alpha King Martin Stormborn," the head elder announced, her voice echoing through the chamber. "You stand accused of violating sacred law by bonding with a forbidden bloodline. How do you answer?" Martin's response was cold and absolute. "I answer that this council has no authority over my choice of mate. The bond was sealed according to your own treaty, witnessed by your own priest. A bond procured through deception." Elder Jerry stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with malice. The girl is an oracle, a bloodline your own ancestors helped us eliminate for the safety of all wolf kind. She used forbidden magic to manipulate the lunar seal, to trap you in a bond that should never have formed. Murmurs rippled through the assembled alphas. I used nothing, Thelma said, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her gut. I didn't even know what I was until the ceremony. Lies come easily to oracles, Jerry sneered. Just as they came to your parents. Tell me, girl, did they ever mention why they were really executed? Thelma's heart hammered. They were innocent. They were conspirators. Jerry pulled out a document, holding it high. I have here a confession, signed by your father before his death. He admitted to using your mother's oracle powers to influence pack politics, to plant seeds of rebellion, to undermine the council's authority. That's impossible. He confessed to planning the assassination of King Dan Stormborn. Jerry's words fell like stones into water, creating ripples of shock throughout the hall. Your parents orchestrated the murder of the Alpha King's father. The world tilted. Martin's hand dropped from hers as if burned. No, Thelma whispered, turning to him. Martin, that's not true. My parents would never. But the look on his face stopped her cold. Not anger. Worse. Betrayal, suspicion, and something that looked dangerously close to the cruel mask he'd worn when they first met. My father was murdered 15 years ago, Martin said, his voice devoid of emotion. Poisoned during a council meeting. The assassin was never found. His pale eyes fixed on her. You were 5 years old. The perfect age to be too young to remember, too innocent to suspect. I had nothing to do with it. Perhaps not consciously. Elder Jerry smiled like a serpent. But oracle magic runs in bloodlines. It can be planted, cultivated, activated when the time is right. Tell me, Your Majesty, have you experienced any unusual visions since bonding with her? Any compulsions? Any thoughts that don't feel quite like your own? Martin's jaw clenched, and Thelma felt his walls slam up through the bond, shutting her out completely. No. No, this couldn't be happening. The bond must be severed, another elder declared. For the safety of the Alpha King and the realm. The girl must be tried for the sins of her bloodline. And executed, Jerry added pleasantly. As her parents were. To finally end this threat once and for all. The hall erupted in debate. Some alphas demanded justice. Others argued for caution. But through it all, Martin stood silent, his hand resting on the pommel of his sword, his expression unreadable. Darius appeared at Thelma's side, his presence a small comfort in the chaos. Your Majesty, he said urgently to Martin. You can't seriously be considering. Take her to the holding chambers, Martin interrupted, his voice flat. Until this matter is resolved. Thelma's world shattered. Martin, please. Look at me. He didn't. He kept his gaze fixed on the council, every inch the ruthless king who trusted no one. Commander Blackwood. Now. Your Majesty. That's an order. Darius hesitated for only a moment before gripping Thelma's arm. I'm sorry, he whispered. Come quietly. Don't make this worse. But as guards surrounded her, as Darius led her from the hall with whispers of traitor's daughter and oracle which following in her wake, Thelma felt something inside her break. Not her power. That surged stronger, fed by rage and betrayal. No, it was her hope that shattered. The hope that maybe, just maybe, Martin had started to see her as more than a political pawn. That the bond between them had been real, not just magical manipulation. She'd been a fool. The holding chamber was deep beneath the palace, cold stone, iron bars, darkness broken only by a single torch. Darius locked her inside, his face etched with conflict. He doesn't mean it, the commander said. He's buying time, trying to figure out what the council's real game is. He abandoned me. Thelma's voice was hollow. The moment they accused my parents, he threw me away like garbage. His father's murder broke something in him. You have to understand. I understand perfectly. She met Darius's amber eyes. I understand that I was stupid enough to believe a monster could change. That a bond could be stronger than fear. Silver light crackled around her fingers. I understand that I'm alone. Again. Like I've always been. You're not. Leave, Commander. Go serve your king. Darius looked like he wanted to argue, but finally, he turned and left, his footsteps echoing into silence. Thelma sank against the wall, drawing her knees to her chest. Through the bond, still horrifyingly present despite Martin's rejection, she could feel his turmoil. His rage. His fear. And underneath it all, buried so deep she almost missed it, his doubt. He didn't believe the accusations. Not completely. But he was too damaged, too scarred by betrayal to trust what his heart was screaming at him. Hours passed. Or maybe minutes. Time lost meaning in the darkness. Then footsteps approached, too light to be guards. Maya slipped into view, carrying a small bundle. She glanced over her shoulder nervously before kneeling by the bars. I don't have much time. The guard rotation changes in 5 minutes. Maya, what are you doing? Helping. She pushed the bundle through the bars, a cloak, a knife, a small pouch. There's a passage behind the loose stone in the east wall. It leads to the forest. You need to run, Thelma. Tonight. Before the council convenes tomorrow and sentences you. I can't run. That would prove I'm guilty. Staying proves you're dead. Maya's eyes were fierce. The council isn't interested in truth. They want you eliminated, and they're using Martin's trauma to do it. If you stay, you die. And if I run, I lose any chance of proving my parents were innocent. Maya grabbed her hand through the bars. Your mother came to me. Once. Years ago, before she died. She made me promise that if anything happened to her, I'd watch for her daughter. That I'd help you when the time came. Thelma's breath caught. You knew her? She saved my life when I was a child. Used her oracle sight to warn my family of a rogue attack. Tears shimmered in Maya's eyes. She was good, Thelma. Kind. Powerful. And she loved you more than anything. Whatever that confession says, it's a lie. I'd stake my life on it. Then why won't Martin believe that? Because he's terrified. Maya squeezed her hand. Terrified that loving you makes him weak. Terrified that the bond is real and he'll lose you the way he lost everything else. Terrified that for once in his carefully controlled life, he can't calculate his way to safety. The guard's footsteps echoed in the distance. Maya stood quickly. Please, Thelma. Run. Live. Prove them all wrong. Then she was gone, melting into shadows. Thelma stared at the bundle, at the promise of escape. But running meant abandoning the truth. Abandoning any chance of clearing her parents' names. Abandoning Martin. Through the bond, she felt him, alone in his chambers, wrestling with demons she couldn't fight for him. And she made her choice. Martin didn't sleep. He stood in his chambers, staring at the moon through his window, feeling the bond pulse with Thelma's pain. Every instinct screamed at him to go to her, to pull her from that cell, to damn the consequences. But his father's face haunted him. Dan Stormborn, strong and just, dying in agony from poison no healer could cure. And the confession Jerry had presented, signed in his father's own blood, witnessed by council members, it should have been proof enough. Should have been. But something was wrong. The pieces didn't fit. A knock interrupted his thoughts. Enter, he commanded. Darius strode in, his expression thunderous. We need to talk. Now. I'm not in the mood for lectures, Commander. Then you'd better find the mood, because I'm about to commit treason. Darius slammed a folder onto Martin's desk. I've been investigating Elder Jerry since you threw your mate into a cell like a common criminal. Martin's eyes flashed dangerously. Watch your tone. Or what? You'll execute me too? Darius's amber eyes blazed with fury. Go ahead. Add me to the list of people you betrayed because you're too terrified to feel something real. The accusation hit like a physical blow. You don't know what you're talking about. I know that confession is a forgery. Darius opened the folder, pulling out documents. Look at the date. Thelma's father allegedly signed this 3 days before your father's death. But I checked the archives. He was in the Southern Territories that entire week, witnessed by 12 different pack members at a territorial hearing. Martin's breath stopped. That's impossible. The council verified. The council lied. Darius pulled out another document. And here's why. I found the real records buried in the old archives. Your father wasn't investigating Thelma's parents for conspiracy. He was investigating the council, specifically Jerry and 3 other elders, for embezzling pack resources and manipulating bloodline records. The world tilted. Your father was murdered because he got too close to the truth, Darius continued. And Thelma's parents were executed because her mother had an oracle vision that would have exposed the whole conspiracy. Jerry killed them all, framed the parents, poisoned the king, and buried the evidence so deep no one would ever find it. Martin's hands clenched into fists. Why didn't this come out during the investigation? Because Jerry controlled the investigation. He was your father's most trusted advisor, he had access to everything. He destroyed the real evidence, planted false testimony, and used the chaos after your father's death to solidify his power on the council. Darius met his king's eyes. He's been controlling you for 12 years, Martin. Using your grief, your rage, your fear of betrayal to keep you isolated and manageable. And Thelma? Was supposed to be the final piece. They sent her here thinking you'd reject or kill her. Either way, they'd eliminate the last oracle bloodline and cement their control. Darius's voice softened. But they didn't count on the bond being real. On you actually caring about her. Martin turned away, his jaw working. Through the bond, he could feel Thelma's presence in that cold cell, not broken, but burning with quiet fury. I threw her away, he said hoarsely. The moment they accused her, You reacted exactly how a traumatized man would react when his worst fear seemed confirmed, Darius said quietly. But you're not just a traumatized man anymore. You're an alpha king with a mate who's been wronged. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Martin closed his eyes, and for the first time in 12 years, he let himself feel it, the full weight of the bond, the connection he'd been fighting since the moment Thelma's blood touched his. She wasn't a manipulation. She wasn't a weakness. She was his strength. His anchor. His mate. And he'd betrayed her. Get me everything you have on Jerry, Martin said, his voice hardening with lethal purpose. Every document, every witness, every shred of evidence. And wake the alphas. All of them. Darius smiled grimly. Now you sound like a king. The cell door opened an hour before dawn. Thelma looked up, expecting guards. Instead, Martin stood in the doorway, still dressed in his formal attire from the summit, his pale eyes burning with intensity. Get up, he said. She didn't move. So you can throw me to the council? I'll pass. Thelma. No. She stood, silver light crackling around her fingers. You don't get to do this. You don't get to lock me away, make me feel worthless, and then waltz back in like nothing happened. You're right. His admission shocked her into silence. I don't get to do any of that. But I'm doing it anyway because I'm a selfish bastard who just realized he's in love with his mate, and I'll be damned if I let the council murder her before I can properly apologize. Thelma's heart stuttered. What? Martin stepped into the cell, and the vulnerability in his expression stole her breath. The confession was a forgery. Your parents were innocent. Jerry killed my father and framed yours to cover his own conspiracy. He moved closer, his hands coming up to frame her face. And I was so terrified of being manipulated again that I didn't see the truth staring me in the face. Martin. I love you. The words came out raw, unpolished. I've been fighting it since the moment we bonded because loving someone means they can destroy you. But you know what I realized tonight? His forehead pressed against hers. You already have the power to destroy me. Whether I admit I love you or not doesn't change that. So I might as well be honest. Tears burned in Thelma's eyes. You threw me in a cell. I know. And I will spend the rest of my life making that up to you. His thumb brushed away a tear that escaped. But right now, I need you to trust me one more time. Because we're about to walk back into that summit hall, and we're going to burn the council's lies to ash. How? Together. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. As Alpha and Oracle. As King and Queen. As mates who refuse to let fear win. Thelma searched his face, looking for deception, for calculation. But all she saw was raw honesty and fierce determination. And love. Real, terrifying, all-consuming love. If you betray me again, I won't. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips, soft and reverent and full of promise. Never again. You have my word as your mate and your king. Through the bond, Thelma felt his absolute conviction. His terror. His love. She took his hand. Then let's go remind the council why they feared oracles in the first place. The summit hall erupted in chaos when Martin walked in with Thelma at his side, her hand clasped firmly in his. Elder Jerry stood, his face purpling with rage. This is an outrage. The girl should be in chains. The only one who'll be in chains is you. Martin's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Commander Blackwood. Present the evidence. Darius stepped forward, armed with documents, witnesses, and 12 years of buried truth. And as the real story unfolded, of corruption, murder, and conspiracy, Thelma felt her power rise to meet Martin's. Silver light intertwined with his alpha dominance, creating something new. Something the realm hadn't seen in centuries. An oracle and alpha, bonded and united, impossible to break. The council's faces went ashen as their lies crumbled. And Thelma, standing beside the king who'd chosen love over fear, finally understood what her mother's vision had shown all those years ago. She wasn't a weapon. She was a revolution. The evidence was damning. Darius laid it out piece by piece, falsified documents, witness testimony from wolves Jerry thought were dead, financial records showing years of embezzlement. But the most devastating proof came from an unexpected source. I have one final witness, Martin announced, his voice carrying absolute authority. Someone who was there the night my father died. The hall fell silent. An elderly woman stepped forward from the shadows, her frame bent with age but her eyes sharp as steel. Thelma recognized her from the palace, one of the kitchen staff, so invisible that no one paid her any attention. State your name, Martin commanded gently. Cindy Moon Whisper, Your Majesty. I served as head healer before I was forced into silence. Her voice trembled but held firm. I was present when King Dan was poisoned. I tried to save him. Elder Jerry shot to his feet. This woman is senile. Her testimony is worthless. Sit down, Martin said quietly, but the command in his voice made every alpha in the room feel the weight of his power. Jerry sank back into his seat, his face contorted with fury. Cindy continued, King Dan didn't die from poison administered during the council meeting. He was poisoned slowly over weeks, a rare compound that mimics natural illness. Only someone with constant access to his private chambers could have done it. Her gaze fixed on Jerry. Someone like his most trusted advisor. Lies. Jerry snarled. Why would I kill my closest friend? Because he discovered your theft, Darius interjected, pulling out another document. King Dan had ordered a full audit of council finances. This is his private journal, recovered from the sealed archives. Read the entry from 3 days before his death. Martin took the journal, his hand steady despite the emotion roiling through the bond. He read aloud, Jerry grows nervous. The audit reveals discrepancies he cannot explain. He asks me to postpone, to give him time to correct errors. But these are not errors. They are systematic theft spanning decades. I confronted him today. He swore loyalty, but I saw fear in his eyes. I must act carefully. If he's corrupted, how many others on the council are compromised? The hall erupted in shocked murmurs. And the connection to Thelma's parents, an alpha called out. Thelma stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. My mother had a vision 3 weeks before the king's death. She saw his murder, saw Elder Jerry's involvement, and she reported it to the council, not knowing Jerry controlled the information flow. Your mother was a threat, Cindy added softly. An oracle who could expose the conspiracy before it fully unfolded. So Jerry acted quickly, poisoned the king, framed your parents as conspirators, and executed them before anyone could verify the truth. This is absurd. Jerry roared, his composure finally cracking. You expect us to believe the delusional visions of a dead oracle over signed confessions and council testimony? I expect you to believe the evidence, Martin said coldly. He nodded to Darius. The commander pulled out a vial filled with dark liquid. This was found hidden in Elder Jerry's private chambers. The same rare poison that killed King Dan, confirmed by 3 independent healers. Jerry's face went white. And before you claim it was planted, Martin continued, we have testimony from your personal servant, who watched you brew it. She's been too terrified to speak for 12 years, until tonight, when she learned the Alpha King's mate was facing execution for crimes you committed. The trap was closing. Thelma felt power building around her, not just her own, but the collective energy of every wolf in the hall. They could sense the truth now, feel it resonating through pack bonds and ancient instincts. Jerry was guilty. You have nothing. Jerry spat, his eyes wild. I am a council elder. I have served for 40 years. You cannot touch me without breaking sacred law. Sacred law? Thelma's voice cut through his protests, and silver light blazed around her. You dare speak of sacred law when you murdered an Alpha King? When you executed innocent wolves to hide your crimes? When you tried to eradicate an entire bloodline because you feared their power? The oracle magic surged through her, and suddenly she could see it, threads of truth and lies woven through the room, connecting every wolf to the conspiracy in ways they didn't even realize. You wanted oracles eliminated because we can see what you hide in darkness, Thelma said, her eyes glowing silver. We can read the truth written in your very soul. So let me show everyone what you really are. She reached out with her power, and the moon answered. Silver light flooded the hall, and in its glow, visions appeared, memories pulled from the fabric of reality itself. The assembled alphas watched in horror as scenes unfolded above them like ghostly theater. Jerry mixing poison into King Dan's wine. Jerry forging the confession with Thelma's father's stolen blood. Jerry ordering the execution before anyone could question the evidence. Jerry laughing with his co-conspirators about how easily they'd manipulated a traumatized 16-year-old king. When the visions faded, silence reigned. Then chaos erupted. Traitor, an alpha roared. Murderer, another shouted. The other council elders scrambled to distance themselves, some genuinely shocked, others clearly complicit and terrified of being exposed next. Jerry backed toward the exit, his hand going to a concealed weapon. But Martin was faster. The Alpha King moved with lethal grace, disarming Jerry in a single fluid motion and slamming him against the wall. His hand closed around the elder's throat, and his eyes burned with 12 years of misdirected grief finally finding its true target. "You killed my father," Martin said, his voice deadly soft. "You made me into a monster. You almost made me destroy my own mate." His grip tightened. "Give me one reason I shouldn't end you right now." "Because I'm not the only one," Jerry choked out, desperation making him reckless. "The corruption runs deeper than you know. Kill me, and you'll never find them all. Then you'll tell us everything." Martin released him, letting him drop to the floor. "Every name. Every scheme. Every lie you've buried." He looked to the assembled alphas. "And you will all bear witness. This ends tonight." Thelma moved to Martin's side, her hand finding his. Through the bond, she sent him strength, love, and fierce pride. He'd chosen justice over vengeance. Truth over fear. Love over isolation. The head elder, one of the few who appeared genuinely horrified by the revelations, stood shakily. "Elder Jerry, you are hereby stripped of your title and authority. You will be imprisoned pending full trial for treason, murder, and conspiracy against the throne." She turned to Martin and Thelma, and for the first time, there was respect in her eyes. "Alpha King, Lady Thelma, the council apologizes for the grievous wrongs committed against you both. We will cooperate fully with your investigation." Martin inclined his head regally. "See that you do." As guards dragged Jerry away, the elder still screaming threats and denials, Martin turned to address the assembly. "For 12 years, I ruled through fear because I believed trust was weakness. I was wrong." His arm wrapped around Thelma's waist, pulling her close. "My mate showed me that true strength comes from standing beside someone who makes you better. From choosing love even when it terrifies you. From trusting the bond the moon herself created." He looked down at Thelma, and the love in his eyes made her heart soar. "Thelma is not just my mate. She is your queen, an oracle whose power will help guide this realm into a new era. An era where truth matters more than politics, where justice is served regardless of rank, and where the bonds between us make us stronger, not weaker." The hall erupted in applause, not polite, but genuine and thunderous. Thelma felt tears streaming down her face as the weight of 20 years of shame and isolation finally lifted. She wasn't cursed. She wasn't a punishment. She was exactly who she was meant to be. 6 months later. Spring had transformed the northern palace into something Thelma barely recognized. Flowers bloomed in courtyards that had been barren for years. Children's laughter echoed through halls that once knew only silence and fear. The throne room, where she'd first knelt in chains, now hosted weekly councils where any pack member could bring grievances directly to their king and queen. Everything had changed. Thelma stood on the balcony of their private chambers, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and rose. Her hand rested on her stomach, still flat, but not for much longer. The healer had confirmed it yesterday. She was carrying the next heir to the northern throne. An oracle child bonded to alpha blood. Something the realm hadn't seen in 3 centuries. "You're thinking too loud," Martin's voice rumbled behind her as strong arms wrapped around her waist. He pulled her back against his chest, his chin resting on her shoulder. "What's troubling my queen?" "Nothing's troubling me. I'm just overwhelmed sometimes." She leaned into his warmth. 6 months ago, I was a prisoner. An orphan everyone believed was cursed. And now? Now you're the most powerful queen the Northern Territories have ever known, he finished, pressing a kiss to her temple. The wolf who exposed the council's corruption, reformed our justice system, and personally trains every young oracle we've discovered hiding in the territories. It was true. Once word had spread that oracles were no longer hunted, 7 young women had come forward, terrified girls who'd been hiding their gifts their entire lives. Thelma had taken them under her protection, teaching them control, showing them their power was a blessing, not a curse. And now I'm carrying your child, Thelma said softly. Martin went very still. Then he turned her to face him, his pale eyes searching hers with an intensity that still made her breath catch. Say that again. I'm pregnant. A smile bloomed across her face. The healer confirmed it yesterday. I wanted to tell you properly, but... He kissed her. Deeply, thoroughly, pouring 12 years of loneliness and 6 months of overwhelming love into the connection between them. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were suspiciously bright. A child, he breathed. Our child. Are you happy? Happy? He laughed, and the sound was pure joy, so different from the cold, cruel king he'd been when they met. Thelma, I'm terrified and ecstatic and completely unprepared, which I suppose is how every new father feels. He cupped her face gently. But yes. I'm happy. Happier than I ever thought possible. Through the bond, Thelma felt the truth of his words, the depth of emotion he no longer tried to hide from her. There's something else, she said. I had a vision last night. Martin's expression grew serious. Thelma's oracle visions had proven invaluable these past months, helping them root out the remaining corrupt council members, prevent 3 assassination attempts, and guide policy decisions that had brought unprecedented prosperity to the Northern Territories. But they also showed her things she couldn't change. Futures that were fixed, written in the stars themselves. What did you see? He asked. Our daughter. Thelma's smile was soft with wonder. She has your eyes and my hair. And her power, Martin, she's going to be extraordinary. Strong enough to bridge the gap between oracles and alphas completely. She'll be the first of a new generation. A daughter, Martin repeated, his voice filled with awe. He knelt suddenly, pressing his forehead against Thelma's stomach. I promise you, little one, you'll never know the fear your mother and I survived. You'll grow up knowing only love, protection, and the freedom to be exactly who you're meant to be. Thelma's fingers threaded through his dark hair, her heart so full it ached. A knock interrupted the moment. Enter, Martin called, standing but keeping Thelma close. Darius strode in, grinning broadly. Sorry to interrupt, but the delegation from the Eastern Territories has arrived. And they brought gifts. He held up a scroll. Including a formal treaty proposal. Seems everyone wants to ally with the king and queen who brought down a corrupt council. Tell them we'll receive them in an hour, Martin said. Already done. Also, Darius's expression grew more serious. Maya asked me to tell you that the monument is ready. Thelma's breath caught. The monument. For her parents. After Jerry's confession, Martin had ordered a full investigation into her parents' lives. What they'd discovered had brought Thelma to tears. Her mother had been a beloved healer, her father a respected teacher. They'd used their gifts to help people, to protect the vulnerable, to stand against corruption even when it cost them everything. They'd been heroes. And now, finally, the realm would know it. The monument stood in the palace gardens, a pillar of white marble carved with her parents' names and the truth of their sacrifice. Lionette and Nelson Ashwood. Oracle and Guardian. Murdered for speaking truth to power. May their courage inspire generations to come. Thelma stood before it with Martin at her side, surrounded by pack members who'd come to pay respects. Maya stood nearby, tears streaming down her face. Darius stood at attention, honoring fallen wolves who'd been denied justice for too long. They would be proud of you, Martin said softly. Of who you've become. What you've built. We've built, Thelma corrected, lacing her fingers through his. I couldn't have done any of this without you. We saved each other, he said simply. You gave me back my humanity. I gave you the power to reclaim your legacy. As the sun set and the moon rose, full and bright and beautiful, Thelma felt the presence of something greater than herself. The oracle magic that ran through her veins, the alpha strength that flowed through the bond, the life growing inside her. And she understood, finally, what her mother's last vision had shown. Not destruction. Not punishment. But hope. A future where oracles and alphas stood together. Where power was balanced with compassion. Where love was stronger than fear. What are you thinking? Martin asked, pulling her closer. Thelma smiled up at the moon. I'm thinking that the council tried to bury us. But they forgot that we were seeds, not stones. And now? Now we bloom. She turned to face him, her eyes glowing silver with power and love and absolute certainty. Now we build a world worthy of our daughter. A world where no one has to hide what they are. Where bonds are celebrated, not feared. Where justice is real, not just a word carved in stone. Martin kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Then that's exactly what we'll do. Together. Together, Thelma agreed. And as they stood in the moonlight, surrounded by wolves who'd once feared them but now followed them with genuine loyalty, as new life grew inside her and the future stretched bright before them, Thelma knew one final truth. She'd been chosen for punishment. But she'd become something far more powerful. A queen. An oracle. A mother-to-be. And most importantly, she'd become herself. Whole, strong, and finally, gloriously free. Thank you so much for watching this journey unfold, beautiful souls. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me what you thought. What was your favorite moment? Did you see the twists coming? And most importantly, what story should I tell next? Remember, you are never defined by where you start. You're defined by who you choose to become. Until next time, keep believing in love, keep fighting for truth, and keep howling at the moon. This is your storyteller, signing off. Stay magical, my wolves.